friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thank you for being here. And we are all decked out today. It's a decent day in Montana, about 80 degrees, beautiful. And we're going to talk to you about letters today. Yes, this is a letters only segment. So if you don't want to listen to the letters, and there are some good ones, I suggest you move on. In the meantime, people send us things all the time, and we are very grateful. You people are so nice. I won't say the lady's name, but this woman sent a whole bunch of nice, fun things for Huck and Angie and I. She went out of her way to make some really nice hand massagers for Huck and some bracelets for Angie. Some really nice stuff. And she sent us this letter, which is probably the neatest printing I've ever seen in my life. Here's a letter. Greetings and salutations, Dave, from the Hoosier State. Trust this stone and chisel snail mail will find you. Angie, executive producer. Huck, arguably the most influential and popular member of your team. Oh, thanks. Driving in good spirits and health, I'd like to congratulate you and the CanAm crew on the overwhelming success of the UFO Connection. That is our most recent documentary you can watch on Amazon. Having poured so much of your heart, time, and sleeplessness and sacrifice into the missing, it's more than well deserved. Much like the founders of our great nation whom broke through in spectacular fashion the status quo of monarchical rule, taxation without representation, and servitude over citizenry, you have done the same for the perception of how victims go missing and circumstances surrounding them if they are found. In a tenacious pursuit of truth, you've ripped the lid off the normal bias in relation to settling for the safety of mundane, socially acceptable explanations. You've chosen to be an advocate for breaking barriers, be it a malevolent design or I'll educate ignorance. It has made you a convenient prime target for character assassination or abject dismissal. I dare say the families of the missing and the dead do not feel the same. You speak for their lost, whom names are now known. That, good sir, is a righteous battle, and every battle needs a champion. In one of the episodes for the missing, you express feeling rather embarrassed over emotional breakdowns and the tears. I know with empathic certainty I am not the only person that refuses that line of thinking. Please, for your mental well-being, do not view it that way. Rather, think of it as a template for others to see there is no shame in being in pain. Asking for help takes a strong constitution of fortitude. That especially pertains to the impact of our male villagers, or any man for that matter. Generally, the over 70% of the male suicides in this country is casually dismissed. Your willingness to express grief is a spark of hope and solidarity for other men. Showing that your emotions are not a silent burden is not an embarrassment, it's courageous. Regarding your beloved and treasured son, Ben, there are no words that I can write here to adequately express sympathy or understanding for your grievous loss. The fluidity and art in Ben's mind's eye was seamlessly translated to continuity of film, especially so in The Hunted. Ben was truly gifted. The bond of fatherhood goes so far beyond just an echo of epignetic memory. Mutual love between you and your son transcends commonly accepted notions and reasons, laws of physics, or evidentiary standards. You've seen and felt the metaphysical energy of Ben's unique and precious signature that no longer suffers mental coil. The wind chimes, like all energies, love cannot be destroyed. Ben showed you that. He did. In this life, you were meant to be his dad. And Ben was meant to be your son and your guide. When the pain of absence takes you into a dark, cold, empty space, always remember that the wind chimes. They are true north to warmth, rescue, and peace. You will meet again. Many of the villagers have written in to share their testimonials, their kinship to loss with the suicide of a loved one. Sadly to share the loss, as my older brother took his own life at the age of 34. Oh gosh, that's horrible. He served honorably and bravely in the Army for 3 tours. The VA denied his PTSD claim and subsequent psychological care. While seeking spiritual relief, he crossed paths with an atrocious and disgusting excuse of a man of the cloth I've ever seen. A pastor in our local church gave him this counsel, quote, "Your nightmares are God's punishment because you are a sinner and haven't sincerely repented." Oh my gosh. He also went on to say that my brother's now traumatized and fatherless 7-year-old child, quote, "Daddy is burning in hell now. He doesn't get to go to heaven." I learned of these things after the fact. I also learned what flash-boiled blood and being red truly means. Needless to say, I can't imagine how brutally and utterly alone and desperate felt. My big brother, whom my heart aches for every day, is also in my brother's arms. We are both oath keepers and veterans. I know firsthand of the gross apathetic inadequacies of given basic care provided by the VA system, adding insult to literal injury. I'm a female and the services are much more dismal, but I digress. As I sat to compose this letter, I intended to share some experiences of the paranormal and UFO variety. Instead, I was compelled to remind you of just how important and valuable you and your work are. Thank you for bringing awareness to the true epidemic of failing mental health care, but that there is help and we are not alone. You're building a foundation to which we may one day garner answers for the families of the missing loved ones, justice for the lost and murdered, and just maybe a platform we can fight back with some more of us are not taken. Don't give up your efforts. You're not in vain. We are listening together. We are strong. Thank you for taking valuable time to read this. With any luck, I did not come off as someone who is snarfing bath salts whilst raising my pet dragon's love for all beings, Abba. All my best to you, Angie, and of course the most intelligent member of the team, Huck. Yeah. Semper Fidelis, Anne. P.S. If you so choose, you're more than welcome to read this letter to the village. All I ask is you redact my name also up if you are intended in my UFO or paranormal studies. Let me know and I'll write it up. Thank you again. P.S. The rabbit stems from rabbit ears on my shooter's ear muffins. One pair was even found activated and the ears would flop every time I fired. It's hysterical. I gotta say, that was one of the most well done letters I've read in a while, so thanks, Anne. I won't say where Anne is at, and I'll keep her private, but I appreciate those letters that are well written, well thought out. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for the items you sent for Huck. Those are great. And Huck, at times, is the most important member of our team for Angie and I. She brings us so much relief into mental health. Sometimes people need something to take care of. They need a dog or a cat. Huck's meant a lot to us at these times of grief. For Ben and Scott. Yeah, Scott Carpenter passed away. But as I've been reminded thousands of times, dog in reverse is God. And it was God's gift to us to have dogs, there's no doubt. So, back to some letters. Hey, Dave and Huck. I was a longtime fan and person with hiking, caving, and camping experience. There's one thing that I'm not sure you have addressed, and I wanted to put my perspective on it. I call it the underworld. Working overnights at a nursing home in '99, I took care of a very old man who was a retired U.S. Army. He would wake up often at night from nightmares screaming about having to feed them, that he didn't want to do it anymore. I asked him who he was talking about. He told me, not who, what. They aren't human, and we'll all die if we don't. Late one night before putting him to bed, I asked him about it. Looking defeated, he said, "The less you know, the better, kid. Besides, it gets worse every day. Nobody will be able to stop what's coming." I asked if he was talking about another country. He shook his head, looked to the floor, pointed to it, and said, "The underworld. Miles and miles below are creatures, and they visit my nightmares every day." Though he had early stage, late onset Alzheimer's, I believed him. I ponder that conversation often. I live in Missouri, and here, unknown to the people above, but definitely known to things that exist below the surface, random sinkholes will open up and have the ability to swallow things. Also, there are caves everywhere. We have locally what is known as the Springfield Underground. You can watch the YouTubes from the truck drivers about it. My point is that there are things going on below the surface like DUMBs and the extensive and sometimes nefarious use of passageways below ground. If you don't believe that they exist, please logic out the reason that there is a submarine base in Iowa. Proof positive. How does this tie into missing 411? Consider this, the trap door in the floor theory. Things can move freely in underground passageways, tunnels, etc. Boulders that can be good camel for a trap door, etc. I've heard this 1,000 times. Dogs don't make mistakes. If somebody went to a trap door and disappeared, they would walk right to that point in the ground, and searchers would dig. So I don't buy into that part of it. Other parts I do. The old man's story has stuck with me all these years, and what he told me now seems to make some sense using this logic. I hope I've opened a new perspective for you, and I just wanted to let you know that you have a great dog. Huck is lucky to have you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Next letter. Hey Dave, first I'd like to say how sorry I am about the friend you lost. I watched the video and he sounded like such a great fun guy for sure. Wish those kind of friends could last forever. Talking about Scott Carpenter. I did a tribute video to him. But look at how blessed you were to have him for the time you did. Yeah. He was on our team for 12 years. I've written so many stories to you after watching your videos. I feel like I should know you especially well. Now, with what I've got to tell you, what happened yesterday that scared the bejesus out of me, and for obvious reasons, you were the first person I know to share this with. I have to preface a few things. I'm an avid outdoor adrenaline junkie. I'm now 60, yet can still single track mountain like a monster, and even ride my bike nonstop to the top of the local ski mountain after years of biking in Colorado. I whitewater rafted at 53, the most dangerous river in the world, the mighty Zambezi, on class 5 rapids with my 15-year-old younger son, who is from Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, passing cracks on the rocks, sunning themselves as we went screaming by. The most amazing captain, of course. While living in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe for the last 8 months of my life, I also, along with my husband, walked alongside scratched big white male and female lions that I was in love with. My husband was scared shitless I'd get hurt, but I was in heaven and the male loved me scratching its belly. Not wild lions, of course. At 53, my husband and I went four-wheeling on a totally scary Moab trail called Poison Spider at 9 p.m., and our driver being one-eyed, yes, he had one eye on, treacherous drops inches away in pitch black. I've been on ET contactee for years, and after the first awake visit, being terrified, got a grip and began to love and openly communicate with ETs, learning many things, and very deeply honored to have such experiences and truthfully feel great love for them. 100% truth. My kids and I met Dr. Leo Sprinkle for a very nice meeting years ago in Laramie, and we had great laughs because he knew I was telling the truth, since he too was a contactee. Though not sure if that's public information, also had a multiple 6-hour missing time events in his life. I talked about Dr. Sprinkle and missing 411, the UFO Connection. Had multiple Bigfoot experiences while living in Jedediah State Park with my then husband who worked for the park. Though now in hindsight it all makes perfect sense with all the ET visits I was having, seeing Bigfoot on board a craft minus the hair. Had an unbelievably cool Bigfoot experience up in the flat top wilderness area south of Steamboat. We were living in the northwest at the time, Chapman Reservoir, finding its nest, its huge tracks leading to the nest, being screamed at, and then by the coming by our sight. Totally cool, and I was not afraid at all. In fact, felt the Bigfoot had a great sense of relief and could mind read completely. You get the point. So every weekend my husband and I single track mountain bike the south side of Rib Mountain at a park called 9 Mile. The forest is thick, but the bike trails are fun, full of ruts and obstacles, etc. We had experience last year where we disappeared for almost 6 hours. We had ridden the same trail multiple times before, but on this day, 1 minute we were riding, the next minute we were totally lost and had no idea where we were. When we got back to the once packed parking lot, it was now totally empty and almost dark. It was crazy. Yesterday, my husband, who always rides in front due to the loving to go really fast, is in great shape, was once again a bit ahead, and I was plugging behind, when suddenly his three-way split appears in the trail in front of me, even lit up despite the day it was very cloudy and smoky, and I'm thinking, what the heck did that split come from? Then I realized I was totally lost and disoriented and didn't recognize the trail at all, thinking, what the heck? We ride this every weekend. What's the problem? Kept pedaling, but the sense of panic started to overwhelm me, wondering if I'd been abducted and put back somewhere else, not near Pardon. Now, Pardon was carrying the backpack with my compass. I forgot to put it on my bike and everything, so I had nothing but tall trees and sun blocked by smoke. And moments later, I was about to stop and turn around and go back to that three-way split that I'd never seen before when two guys came down the trail. The bikes gave me the opportunity to ask if they'd seen my husband. Thankfully, they replied yes, and he was up ahead waiting for me. Needless to say, I was totally happy, but then after they left and I was riding alone to the split where he always waits for me, I was overcome with fear. I knew I was being hunted by something and being followed the entire time. Dave, I ride alone behind him every single weekend and embrace the beauty of nature. I love the wilderness, but yesterday was totally different. The feeling in my solar plexus was so bad it almost felt like I had no chance. I was a goner no matter what. At that moment, I stopped my bike, looked to see up to the sky, and in the name of Jesus and God, please protect me and surround me in the light of God. And with that, I got on my bike, and there was my husband. I almost began to cry, and I don't cry very often. I told him I felt like something was trying to separate me from him and grab me. Makes me 411 missing person. After this, he rode behind me. The feeling of doom lifted, and I wasn't scared. We rode fast and hard. To say I was relieved when we made it back to the parking lot is an understatement. It was freaking terrifying to the point that I don't know if I'll go back. There's something not right out there, and all I can think of is there's a portal with things coming and going. I also can't help but wonder if CERN in Switzerland is intentionally opening the portals and letting things in from other dimensions. Almighty Dave, that's my story. Yet another crazy one under the belt as to why some people have many things happen to others, and it has everything to do with our views and philosophy and connection with the universe and one's personal frequency. The higher the frequency, the more experiences, because you cross over into other dimensions, timelines easier. I somewhat believe in this because I know certain people have had so many experiences in their life, paranormal wise, and other people have none. I don't know if it's frequencies or if it's your ability to open your mind, your pineal gland in your mind. I don't know. Something is different with people. Hey Dave, it's an honor that you're reading my letter. I wish I could have discovered you sooner. I'm new to the village, but I'm catching up fast with your work and listening to your daily podcasts on YouTube when I'm driving my semi to work. Your letters segment is my favorite. Well, here you go. You should be happy. I feel that it's a chance for the average person like myself to be heard. We're all average. I'm nothing special. It's an honor for me to read your letters. And I believe that you and all the villagers will believe me when I have to say. I'm sorry for this being so long, but there's too much interesting things that have happened to me while I've been in the woods. A little about me. I've been hunting and fishing almost 41 years of my life by myself and with my dad and hunting partner. Going into the woods alone never bothered me. I'm an Eagle Scout, related to Meriwether Lewis, and have Irish, German, English in my blood. I don't do drugs, and I'm not crazy. My first story happened in mid-September 2017. I was archery elk hunting at the time. The camp was at a place called Midway Meadows, not far from Mount Adams in Washington. Elevation was around 4,000 feet. I was the only one that had camp set up at the end of the Alpine Meadow. It's a rough drive getting down to the spot. The nearest town is Packwood, Washington, 25 miles away. I've camped and hunted this area for 14 years prior. I just finished up a day of hunting by myself and was getting dinner ready. My kitchen tent was an enclosed pop-up easy up. It was around 7 p.m. in the dark. Calm night, no wind. All I could hear was my propane lantern and my burners on my camp stove. Other than that, the outside elements were quiet. At one end of the cook tent was my cooking area. The other end was a couple camping chairs and a table to sit in and eat. While I was cooking dinner, I couldn't help but feel a presence of something with me sitting at the chair at the other end of the cook tent. I'd look over to see and wouldn't see a thing. That would be unnerving. I continued to cook my steak on my stove for a few more minutes, and I remember smiling and turning my head towards the back of the cook tent, then saying out loud, "I know I'm not the only one in here by myself," and immediately after I said that, it sounded like a jet engine right next to my cook tent. The door opened up, and it all lasted for a few seconds, and the wind, jet noise, and it was gone. Craziest thing is that the wind, jet noise never blew over my cook tent or how strong the noise was. I don't know if it was paranormal, alien, whatever. That night, a freak snowstorm came in and dropped 3 inches of heavy, wet snow. I woke up to my tent caving in. I quickly grabbed my most important items and got out of there, off the mountain, until conditions improved 2 days later. I never camped in that spot again at midday. I've only told my wife and sister about this event because of fear I'd be laughed at. No laughing here. The second story happened early in September 2003. I was grouse and bear hunting with my dad on the North Trail at Tatoosh Mountain by Mount Rainier. We hunted and hiked to the summit at 6,000 feet. We started to make our way down at 2 p.m. We got back down low enough till we started getting back at tree line. My dad stopped and told me that he'd walked the trail down to the next switchback down below, and he wanted me to cut straight down a hill through the trees to hopefully bump a grouse or a bear. So I started my descent down through the trees and kept walking slowly, looking for an animal, but also looking at the trail. I continued walking another 5 minutes, started to kind of panic because I wasn't seeing the trail. I got down the ridge even deeper and heard a loud whistle up to my right. I thought nothing of it, thinking it was a bird, and continued walking. Then the whistle happened again, and it stopped me. I turned and looked to see nothing where the whistle was coming from. I completely changed direction and headed to where I heard the sound. I walked 10 more feet and stumbled on the trail, right at the switchback where my dad wanted me to meet him. My dad was walking down the trail slowly 50 yards away, and when he caught up to me, I asked him if he heard the whistle. He looked at me confused and said no. A few years went by and I told nobody about this story. My family and I went to an annual Packwood flea market, and we were walking around, and I happened to stop dead in my tracks. I came across a sign out in front of a Packwood museum, and it talked about a famous horse packer named Willie Owens. He was in the book Tatoosh, written by Martha Hardy, and her experience as a fire lookout watcher on Tatoosh back in the 40s. The sign said his whistles can still be heard up on Tatoosh. I believe this man may have saved me up on Tatoosh from getting lost, or maybe something else. Last one. My wife and I were sitting around a fire at our house on Cedro Woolley, Washington in October 2018. It was 8 p.m. We were having a couple drinks, but not enough that we were drunk. Something in the sky caught my attention. I told my wife, "What's that?" We were looking northeast towards Mount Baker and saw this round object, pulsating orange and white colors, moving fairly slowly, heading west at about 2,000 feet. We watched it for a few seconds, and its behavior acted like it got noticed, and it changed direction and shot out of our atmosphere to northwest direction at lightning speed. We both looked at each other in disbelief. I was on the fence believing before this event about orbs and UFOs. Not anymore. Something bigger is going on. Strange things are happening in the woods. I've seen a bear walking and go behind a tree to disappear. I figured he climbed the tree immediately, and I looked up the tree to find no bear. I've heard my dad tell a story of a buck he saw about to shoot disappear behind a tree and never come the other side. After hearing about you bringing to light portals, makes me wonder if they're out there opening and closing when you least expect it. Again, I'm sorry for the long email, Dave. Keep up the great work. I'll catch you in the next podcast. Thank you for that. Well, there are a lot of these stories. There's too many of these stories for it to just be fabrication. Plus, I know a lot of these are true because many of these things I've experienced personally. So, interesting quote was sent to me. Before I was 6 years old, my grandparents and my mother had taught me that if all green things that grow were taken from the earth, there could be no life. If all the four-legged creatures were taken from earth, there could be no life. If all the winged creatures were taken from earth, there could be no life. If all of our relatives who crawl and swim and live within the earth were taken away, there could be no life. But if all human beings were taken away, life on earth would flourish. This is how insignificant we are. It's a quote by Russell Means from the Oglala Lakota Nation, November 10th, 1939. He died October 22nd, 2012. I think Russell was probably correct. Okay, Dave. I know there may be no definitive answer, but when wildlife noise falls still and silent in the woods, it is a general consensus to leave ASAP or to remain where one is. All this talk of portals would make me hesitant to run into something. I had armed police raid a nearby house here in England, and I've experienced everything around going quiet, so I have first-hand knowledge of this. I'm also becoming adept at noticing the feeling of being watched by others, which manifests as a sort of uncomfortable feeling in the direction of that person. I like to spend time on my own in the woodland. I will likely acquire a personal locator beacon, even though the scale of the locality of the woodland is a lot less vast and adventurous than you guys have in the USA. Listening to a lot of 411, I've learned not to be complacent and that strange things can happen anywhere. This is true, and including England. And I've written about people that have disappeared there, so any input on the original question would be great, in which you are the best, incredibly brave, and a useful path. Woods go quiet. I would say get with a friend, go back to back, sit back to back on a tree, and don't move and wait for the sounds to come back. Because if you try to walk out, you don't know if you're going to walk right into a portal. Hey Dave, hopefully this email finds you well. I recently watched your film on Missing 411, the UFO Connection. It was very well done. You can get it on DVD at our website. Something I've often pondered on is the profile points of potential abductees who are hunters if they believe in Jesus Christ. I've heard from someone named Chuck Missler, a well-known Bible teacher who has now passed away, that in over 2,000 years there's been no documented cases of Christians who were abducted unless they willfully chose to go. There's also credible evidence that the name of Jesus sparked some sort of reaction in those beings. I'm interested and possibly going to pursue the profile point further. I believe there's a strong connection between the UFO phenomenon and spiritual matters. The Bible tells us not to make any graven image of anything in heaven above or that is the water beneath the earth, Exodus 24. The verse explains that there are beings living in the water beneath the water and things that are in the heavens and we aren't supposed to worship. This would explain the USO UAP phenomena. So first, a couple of things. Let me finish the letter. In summary, I would like to know if you have ever asked the families of those who went missing if their missing loved one believed in Jesus. Also, are you a believer in the Son of God? Of course I am. You need to read many books to go to the library. Okay. Believing in Jesus Christ, that he existed, does not mean you are a Christian. There's two different things here. You may have just believed he existed, but not believe in the following. I've been asked similar questions in the past, but someone may say one thing to somebody to evade conflict. Yeah, if someone goes to church every Sunday, goes to Sunday school, blah, 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 there may be some pressure on that person to say, yeah, I'm a Christian. So, I don't put a lot of credence in people saying I'm a Christian or I believe in God, etc. I'm sorry. Personal beliefs are personal beliefs, and I like to leave them personal. Hey Dave, I heard you the first time and said you wanted to hear about Orbs, so sorry for the wait. I have the privilege of being a follower of you and Ben during many of these human-hating times. Here's a small green orb story for you. First of all, a little about me. I was born in Texas during the early 80s in a small part of a Native American on both sides of my parents. And besides my father's last name and my mother's multi-ethnical history I'm intrigued about. My father's grandma was said to be an actual witch in Mexico, though my mom's related to a famous bushwhacker. One night during mid-2022, I was resting in a small town park between Austin and San Marcos. I checked Google first and it said it was a 24-hour park, so I ended up drifting off to sleep. Later woke up at night with an officer knocking at my window. It was a female officer telling me the park was closed, but I could tell I was surrounded by more officers. I left for a local closed library area. I've been to the Masonic Library before for free Wi-Fi and packed by the street in front of it. I shut my car off, put my head down by the steering wheel because I was scared, anxious, and uncertain. I was caught off guard and outnumbered, but I opened my eyes, and between my car window and the landscape lighting hitting the library, I saw a small green orb slowly appeared. It was the size of a pea, I'd say, and slowly moved from my left to right, but hidden in front of the lights. It had a hypnotic flow of a slight up and down motion, which I guess I watched for 10 or 15 seconds. As it finally moved from the lights and slowly disappeared with the trees in the background. Once it was gone, I noticed all my concerns and worries were gone and would not come to stay or bother me anymore, as much as it did right before. I was thankful and encouraged for it and hoped to see it again someday. From my teenage years, I'm familiar with run-ins with police and have to say most were civil with me, and I was straight up with them. Are orbs once people and around us during the daytime? Were orbs here before people, and will they be here after if the planet dies? Some questions of mine, I wonder. But lastly, thank you, Ben, and your team. Keep it up. Well, the only way we can keep it up is people like you that have written quality letters to us. And I got to say that last 30 minutes, we had some great letters. And that's what puzzles me about people saying, oh, I don't like the letters segment. I think the intellectual conversation that we have in the letters, talking about them, makes us think. It's almost a dialogue between you and me in the letters. And this time, the letters were very well written. A lot of times I get letters that have huge run-on sentences. Please don't send those. They're hard to read and hard for me to get through, and a lot of times I don't even bring them up to the people. So my thoughts about that. Moving forward, thank you. If you like this letter segment, give it 2 thumbs up. It's important. If you like the letter segment and you want to keep it going, please forward these, because it's important that we educate masses. If we keep educating the people that are in close, we're not getting the word out. We're not. Think of the people whose attitudes and beliefs and way of life have changed since this channel's come about. Carrying personal locator beacons, hiking with pairs. If this information doesn't get out, then we're not really helping people per se. And that's how this was all designed by Ben and I. It was about helping people. And that's Huck out there. Woof, woof. Oh. Okay, well, hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate you very much. Until we meet again, Paulides out.